everybody. Thanks for being here. Come on, put those hands together now like this. We're here to worship Jesus. We've gathered together to worship the King. Yeah, Jesus, you are worthy. Yeah. On the day that you were broken, you bled and died for the glorious Messiah was crucified, and the price of our redemption had been paid. It is finished. Sing on the day that death was trampled. On the day that death was trampled, you rose to life, bringing freedom for the prisoner, sight for the blind. Now the price of our redemption has been paid. It is finished. Thank you, Jesus. Let's sing You're Alive. You're alive, God of redemption. You rebuild what is broken. Jesus Christ, hope resurrected. All the glory belongs to you. Come on, like this now. Yeah. On the day we stand before you, arms open wide, we will be with you forever. The Lord Most High, and the price for our eternity is paid. Sing, it is finished. It is finished. Thank you, Jesus. Yeah. You're alive, God of redemption. You rebuild what is broken. Jesus Christ, hope resurrected. All the glory. Sing it again now. You're alive, God of redemption. You rebuild what is broken. Jesus Christ, hope resurrected. All the glory belongs to you. It belongs to you. Yeah. We stand in your victory. We are free in you. Yeah. When we thought all was lost, our Savior made a way. It is finished. Satan thought he had won, but the stone was rolled away. It is finished. My sins nailed to the cross and buried in the grave. Sing it now. It is finished. Let your people arise. Let every heart broken declare it now. It is finished. My sins nailed to the cross and buried in the grave. It is finished. Let your people arise. Let every heart proclaim. Sing it out. It is finished. Yeah. You're alive, we say. You're alive, God. You rebuild. Yeah. Jesus Christ, hope resurrected. All the glory is yours. You're alive. Yeah. You rebuild what is broken. Jesus Christ, hope resurrected. All the glory belongs to you. Yeah, come on now. It belongs to you. Every breath, every thought, every word, it belongs to you, Jesus. Yeah, come on, let's give it up for him. Oh,
wanna send. The oceans push and pull at your command. You hold the moon and stars within your hands. And oh, with just a breath, the world began. So we sing, God, there's nobody like you, God. There's nobody like you, God, and there will never be. Oh, we believe that today. Oh, there'll never be anyone like you, God. When nothing we could do would be enough. From heaven's highest place, you reach for us. Come on, that's a reason to be thankful today. My sin and shame forever overcome. Oh, the grave was overwhelmed by perfect love. Yeah, we sing, God, there's nobody like you, God. There's nobody like you, God, and there will never be. I know, oh God, there's nobody like you, God. There's nobody like you, God, and there will never be. Oh, there'll never be. Now let's put our hands together as we sing to the God who stands alone. We believe it, we declare it. Sing, your name is greater. Your name is greater than any name I know. Your throne is higher than any other throne. You are the author, the creator of it all. You stand alone. You stand alone. Oh God, there's nobody like you, God. Oh, there's nobody like you, God, and there will never be. I've searched and I found this. Oh God, there's nobody like you, God. There's nobody like you, God, and there will never be. Yeah, come on, in your own words, just begin to tell him how faithful you are. Oh, no one's ever loved me like you have, God. No one's ever cared for me like you care for me, God. You are a faithful Father. You are a constant friend. And I know that no one compares to you. No one compares. There'll never be anyone like you. There'll never be anyone like you. There'll never be anyone like you, God. Yeah, we stand on this simple truth today. There'll never be anyone like you. There'll never be anyone like you. There'll never be anyone like you, God. Yeah. There'll never be anyone like you. There'll never be anyone like you. There'll never be anyone like you. Oh, there's no one like you, God. Yeah. There'll never be anyone. Oh, no one like you. None beside you, God. Hey, well, good morning. I just want to say welcome to church this morning. We have one more song that we're going to sing together, and we've been singing a lot about how there's nobody like our God. He is so faithful. He's so constant. So we're going to sing to him today because he is worthy. Let's sing this. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. You're worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. So worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Come on, wherever you're at today, let's lift our hands as we sing. Holy, holy, there is no one like you, and there is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder, show me who you are, and fill me with your heart, and lead me in your love to those around me. Oh, that's our prayer today. Always sing worthy, worthy of every song we could ever sing. You're worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you, Jesus. Sing his name. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. So worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for only you. Oh, we sing holy, and there is no one like you, and there is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder, show me who you are, and fill me with your heart, and lead me in your love to those. Oh, you're holy, holy. There is no one like you, and there is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder, show me who you are, and fill me with your heart, and lead me in your love to those around me. Oh, we stand in awe of who you are, God. We're so thankful. We're so grateful. So we stand on this truth today. You will never fail us, and we will not be shaken when we put our trust in you. Come on, let's sing this out. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone. And yeah, let's declare this over ourselves together. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put
So we're going to continue in the series we started last week, and we introduced the series, the message last week by sharing some stats. There was a survey done, and this is evangelical Christian millennials who said, I think it was 47% said that they felt like sharing your faith with a person from another religion was a wrong thing to do. And we talked about how that was in conflict with the Great Commission that Jesus gave us. And so we dealt a little bit with what do we do about this whole reality of talking about our faith in Christ without it feeling pressured and weird, and where it can be an authentic part of who we are. And so that was one of the things we wrestled with. And the conclusion we gave you last week was this, that telling people about Jesus isn't about selling them on something, it's about serving them. But in order to serve them effectively, we have to speak about Jesus at some point in our life. Now, this particular conversation about talking about Jesus, okay, I remember when I was 15 years old, it was the moment when I decided as a young person to give my life to Christ. It was at a youth camp. And then I went back to be a sophomore at Gateway High School over in Monroeville, and I really felt like Jesus had made a difference in me, and I wanted to share that with my friends, but I felt this tremendous gap between, my church friends and my church world, where I could talk about what it was to follow Jesus freely, and my basketball team friends that weren't at all Christians and didn't understand that. So I'd be on the school bus riding to school, and I think today's the day I'm going to talk about my faith. And then I was thinking, how do we go from, wasn't that an amazing Steelers game? That was an incredible win. By the way, do you know Jesus as your Lord and Savior? Like that's a big gap, right? Isn't it like, man, Rocky III, that's the era Rocky III, wasn't that a great movie? By the way, did you know Jesus could be your champion? Like, how do you go from one to the other? This huge gap between these two worlds that I lived in, and that's part of what makes us feel a bit weird. So we actually can see a little bit of this dynamic in Acts chapter 17. Paul is the missionary church planner. He's traveling around to places in Asia and Greece and even Italy. And here we find him in Athens, this ancient city, Athens in Greece. And it tells us, verse 17, he reasoned in the synagogue. The synagogue was the place where the Jews would worship every week, every Sabbath. And so these are people from the same worldview as Paul. They believed in the Bible. So there were Jews and God-fearing Greeks that believed the same worldview. And that was a real simple place for Paul to talk about Jesus being their Messiah. But then he went into the marketplace, and it says day by day he was there talking to people who happened to be there. And in Athens, they become curious about what Paul has to say, and they lead him into this big facility called the Areopagus, and they begin to talk to him there. And it tells us in verse 22, Paul stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus, this huge auditorium, and says, people in Athens, I see that in every way you're religious. So now he's trying to build some common ground. I can see you're religious, not my religion, but you have a religious approach. And so let's have a dialogue here, he begins to say. In verse 23, I looked around and I looked carefully at your objects of worship, and I found that there was this statue out there, this altar to an unknown God. Let's talk about that. What we can discover about this God that you have a statue to. And he starts there a conversation in Athens that leads to something. And so we're going to talk about now this idea of, okay, if I'm leaning in and I want to share my faith, how do I bridge the gap between my thinking and a world that is often now somewhat ambivalent or hostile to the idea of the Christian faith. And I'm not going to do this alone today. I actually have a guest that's going to help me, an expert that's going to help me. So would you give it up for Preston Ulmer as he comes to the platform today? Awesome. So Preston is the author of a brand new book we'll tell you about in a minute called The Doubters Club. But first, just introduce yourself and your family and all that good stuff.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for letting me be here. I really appreciate it. My name's Preston. I'm married to Lisa, and we have two daughters, Piper and Brennan, 9 and 7 years old. They've been praying for you, so today will be a good day. When they pray, things happen. So I'll have them pray that the snow stops if it hasn't stopped yet. We live in Springfield, Missouri.
We figured we'd give you the true end of March Pittsburgh experience.
Yeah,
so
I feel like
go.
spring is mad at me. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, all right. So you wrote The Doubters Club, and this is a really great book that talks about how to have conversations of faith. But it really comes out of your own personal story in a way. Yeah. So why don't you tell us that?
Yeah, so my story is unique. Well, I will say this. The more I hear about people and their story, maybe my story is not all that unique. I became an atheist in Bible college. That's when I left the faith. You know, you go to Bible college to get stronger in your faith. And I'm not going to tell you what college. It doesn't matter. I know you're thinking, was it the one? Was it this one or that one? It's on me. It's not on them. But I remember having, growing up, I would have kind of a more flat reading of the Bible, just meaning, I didn't really try to apply it to my life all that much. It was just, it's a good thing to do, to read it and then to have a relationship with Jesus. But it always felt a little surface level. And then I started having these questions. And I can tell you, like, it felt so traumatic that I can tell you where I was when the question started. And the question started like this. Why is God not answering my prayers? And then they snowballed a little bit into, well, what kind of God doesn't answer prayers? And then it got further like, well, then there's probably not a God. And you're like, that's a leap. Well, it just snowballed and continued. And I even went to the doctor because I was like, please find something wrong with me, because the whole doubting kind of spiraled into depression. And they said, your levels are fine and you're fine. And I'm like, I'm not okay. And I went and asked pastors, well-meaning pastors. I was like, what do I do? I have so many doubts and questions. I don't even think I believe this stuff anymore. And this was their advice. They said, sleep on the Bible. Okay, like osmosis, like sleep on the Word of God. I don't know if it's because I used NIV and not ESV, but it didn't work. Okay, and then they said listen to more worship music, which is very frustrating if you're not believing in God and then you're memorizing worship songs. You're like, what is going on? And I just, everything that you would say, if you're a Christian here or you're watching online or another campus, and you'd say, when we're worshiping, you felt something, you're like, my spirit's connecting to God. However you would word that, I didn't have any of that. I was like, just questions, pestering questions. And I just go, I don't believe this anymore. So then I went to Bible college. I went back. You're like, you went back? Yeah, I needed to get at least an associate's degree. I didn't want to waste all that money. And I go back to Bible college as a non-believer, and I was sitting in my dorm room, and I'm not saying you should pray this prayer, but this is what I pray. I just said, God, if you're there and you don't do anything, I'm never coming back to you. And it wasn't an ultimatum. I wasn't trying to twist God's arm. I was just so sad, mad. It was like my farewell to God, which, as long as you have breath in your lungs, there's actually no such thing as a farewell to God. And I took a nap because I was tired. I woke up, and I will say this. Anytime we talk about spiritual experience, and if you're here and you're skeptical of that, I am the person who started the Doubters Club, okay? So I'm also skeptical of it. But the only thing I tell you is I had a profound experience where I felt love. I felt like in and through me, the way you worded it last night was right. I was like baptized into love. That's what I felt. And it's like I crashed into the kingdom of God. It's not, I wouldn't say that that's when I was following Jesus. I crashed. And then someone came to me, learned about my summer, a professor of philosophy and apologetics, and said this. He said, hey, can I help you with your questions? And I'm like, well, yeah, I already tried sleeping on the Bible. I don't know what else you got. And he said a phrase that set the trajectory for my life. And he said, I don't care where you land as long as you're honest. So get this. He gave me permission to not believe. He actually thought I had integrity on this journey. And spoiler alert, I'm now a pastor. I do believe in Jesus. Okay, all that happened. But that was part of my journey, and it's a significant part that set us up for the Doubters Club.
Yeah, so you woke up from the nap feeling the love of God just sort of blanketing you. Yeah. And then you met somebody that was willing to listen and let you process out loud.
If I had that experience without that person, I don't think I'd be Christian. Yeah. I would just be like, well, that was a great moment in my life. Yeah.
So Doubters Clubs are places where people can do that, right?
That's right. So Doubters Clubs are where you have a Christian and a non-Christian that are co-moderating discussion, where they are modeling friendship and pursuing truth with each other. So we have them all over the world now. Can I tell them how it got started? You want me to? When we're in Denver, Colorado, we moved there because now we live in Missouri, but when we lived in Denver, we were going to move there because we wanted to start a church. This is actually how Pastor Jeff and I got to know each other, through the Church Multiplication Network. And whenever I was there, I was looking for the neighborhood to plant a church in. My wife's pregnant with our second child, and no pressure, but she's like, find a neighborhood, Preston, in 2 days, you know? And she's living in Texas at the time. We were living together. Okay, because we're married. Okay, so anyways, all that to say, I walk in a coffee shop and I just said, hey, this is a dumb question to a random coffee shop owner. I said, hey, what kind of church do you go to? But to ask in Denver is like, what? And he just laughed and he said, I don't go to church, I'm an atheist. And we went back and forth. I said, I used to not believe any of this either. And then I think I even told him, I'll buy more coffee if you'll just answer the question. And he said, here's what I go to, a place where I can ask questions and I'm not judged for thinking differently. Okay. Now, if you pause for a second, you're like, that's actually not a church, because the dialogical setting of just asking questions, what is this thing? So then you fast forward a few months, and he saw me in the coffee shop, and he's like, Preston? You know? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, did you move here based on what I said? And how do you tell an atheist, like, well, you and the Holy Spirit both spoke to me, you know? And I said, kind of. And then I just said, what if we started this thing called the Doubters Club? We have ground rules for it, and we wrote them all on napkins. And what if we modeled our friendship and pursued truth with one another? And we started the Doubters Club, and you know, they vote on the topic to talk about the next meeting. So imagine an unsaved congregation picking the sermon series every time, right? It's like that. And it's wonderful. And what it does is it allows this dialogue to take place. And instead of me going and finding the answers or being the person with all the answers, which I'm not, my kids quickly let me know I'm not. And so instead of being that person, we actually listen, what's the question you're wrestling with? And can we find the answer together? And here's the deal. If I'm wrong, I would want to know. But if God is truth, the closer we get to truth, the closer we get to God, right? So when someone says, well, what if you find out you're wrong? And I'm like, well, if we're dealing with the truth, what am I scared of?
Yeah, but that is one of the things. You say, you sit in a room with people from various religious backgrounds and worldviews, and you're the Christian in the room that has to give an answer for your faith in the middle of all of that. Well, I don't know. That would make me feel a little bit intimidating. Like, I don't know. What if I don't know the answer? What if someone asks a question I don't know the answer to? So what about that?
Well, if someone asks a question that I don't know the answer to, we could just say these words, 3 words, I don't know. I don't know. Now, here's why that's so hard for Christians, and I am a Christian, so if you're like, don't talk bad about us, I'm talking bad about me too. But we actually think, follow me here, our faith is as strong as it's absent of doubt, okay? We act like our faith is even stronger if we don't have questions. But when you look throughout the Bible, that's just not true. When Jacob wrestled with God and then his name was changed to Israel, and then there's a whole people group named the Israelites, that word Israel means to strive or to wrestle with God. So God names his people God wrestlers. This is what he names them. He could have named them anything else. He could have been certainty-seeking people, right? Whatever that word is in Hebrew. But he named them God wrestlers. Our faith is actually not determined by your level of psychological certainty. Our faith is the ability to commit to a course of action in the face of uncertainty, based on confidence, is what Hebrews tells us, not based on certainty. So it's like this, which by the way this is how we act in life anyways. When I was getting married, Pastor Jeff, you weren't there at my wedding, but if you were, and let's say that Lisa and I are about to get married, it's the day of my wedding, and you're like, Preston, I need to talk to you. And you said, how do you know when you're 50, Lisa's not going to run off with a 20-year-old? I'd be like, number 1, you're not my friend anymore, okay? Number 2, I don't know. How do I know that? I don't know. And then what if you said, well, then why are you going to marry her if you don't know with absolute certainty? I'd go, well, based on the confidence I do have, I'm going to commit, right? If I were to say, where are you going to drive home if you don't know that you're not going to slide off into a ditch? Like, why would you even get in the car? And you're like, well, because I have a level of confidence but I don't know certain, this is how you live your life. So when people have questions for you that you don't know, it's okay to say, I don't know, because your faith is not compromised whenever you don't have the answer. Your faith is actually compromised when you're unwilling to commit to the process in the face of uncertainty.
That's great.
So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, and so people that haven't yet come to faith in Christ are dealing with the uncertainty just to be able to get there. And there's a process of discipleship. You want to describe that?
Yeah, we it's called the Ingle scale, and so James Ingle, he came up with it in the 70s. But if you picture a number line, and 0 is salvation, okay? It's trusting in Jesus. It's that moment of conversion. Positive 10 is Billy Graham, like we just heard, which I will say, sometimes people say, Preston, you're so unconventional, and you don't like traditional approaches. I say, I do. My mom was actually saved at a Billy Graham crusade. So I'm forever indebted to those type of approaches. But let's just say 0 is conversion, positive 10 is Billy Graham. James Ingle said, to every positive number, there's a what? Negative. You guys went to school. Good job. So negative number, there's negative 10. So then the question is, what about the negative 10s? What about the God haters? What about the people who actually want nothing to do with Christianity? They want nothing to do with church. How do we disciple them? And you may be sitting here and think, well, discipleship happens after conversion, right? But I think there's an argument to be made, and actually it's more scriptural to think discipleship happens pre-conversion too. I guess I would ask, when did the disciples become Christians, right? When did they have the Spirit of God with them and they believed in the resurrected Christ and they lived by the power of the resurrected Christ? That would be after the resurrection, okay? It's just timeline stuff. After the resurrection. Then the question is, what was Jesus doing those 3 years? He was discipling them, right? So discipleship on the negative side of the scale, I mean that descriptively, I'm not saying you're negative, right? But I mean, discipleship on the negative side of the scale is really important, and it looks very different. So here's what we call the 5 I's of discipleship, okay? On the negative side of the scale. So if you're sitting here and you're like, I have someone who doesn't think like me, and they're not Christian, I have a hard time with maintaining relationship with them, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand because I think all of our hands would go up. Just let's just go through the 5 I's. One is impression. Starting, you start wherever you start, okay? So let's start here. What's their impression of you? What's their impression of you? Are you always trying to convert them every single time that is that what you're always trying to do? The impression that people had of Jesus, that weren't the non-religious people had of Jesus, was incredible. They loved being around him. And so we got to ask ourselves, what's the impression like? It's really important if we ever want to have intentional conversations about like the big questions of life, that people just can genuinely like us, that they like being around us. It's like that movie Toy Story. During quarantine, we watched all 3, and then it occurred to me what I'm going to tell you here. But in Toy Story, I don't know if you've seen that movie. If you haven't seen it, I think you've had 30 years to see it. So spoiler alert coming up, okay, on how this thing ends. Toy Story, you have Andy, which is the boy who has the toys, and then you have Woody. You remember this? And Woody's the cowboy. And they have a great relationship. And Woody kind of leads the charge and tells all the other toys what's going on, and when there's a birthday party. But then who comes in to compromise the safety of everyone's relationship is Buzz. Buzz Lightyear, Space Ranger, okay, to be specific. And he comes in, and Woody hates it. And what does he keep telling him? Buzz, you're a toy, right? He's like, Buzz, you're delusional. There's a scene where he says, you're a child's plaything, right? And Buzz says back to him, you are a sad, strange little man. And you have my pity, is what he says. And then he says, farewell, okay? He does this, says farewell. And which, by the way, is, I think, the reaction that the world's having to the church in so many ways. What Woody knows is, in that moment, actually, when they're under the car arguing, what Woody knows is, I can't return home to Andy without Buzz, right? He actually says this. He's like, because Andy's heart is for Woody and Buzz to come back together. Yes, they're so different. Yes, they are not like each other. They don't look, think, or act like each other. Yes, if you want to get theological, Buzz is wrong and Woody's right. Andy wants them both. And so the impression Buzz has of Woody has to change if Buzz is ever going to follow him home to Andy, you see. And so Woody, throughout the movie, starts to serve Buzz. And in the moment when Buzz realizes he's wrong, right? And it's gone. And I think he has like an arm like that's not attached. Remember, it's like broken down. Woody's there not to tell him how wrong he is, but to love him and to bring him back to Andy. If people have a bad impression of you and the impression's off, and they just don't like being around us, we're going to return home without Buzz. And that's not the heart of the Father. So I think the closer you get on the Engel scale to the 10, the closer you get to the prodigal. That's the heart of the Father. So 1 is impression. Number 2 is intention. It needs to be clearly stated. If they never think like you, are you still going to be their friend? It sounds so elementary, but it is like the hardest thing to do in Christian circles. If they never become a Christian, will they still be your friend? This means there's no ulterior motive. Ulterior motive is like, that's why I like the title of this series. It's like the hard sell, right? It's like I'm going to befriend you so that you can befriend Jesus, right? Which would make a terrible bumper sticker. But you know what I'm saying? But some of us would put it on our cars. That's what I'm saying is there can be no ulterior motive here. An ultimate motive is different. Ultimate motive is according to your worldview. So my worldview, and I tell this to Doubters Club, unbelievers too, I want everybody to know God because I believe in God. I want everyone to know Jesus. I want that for them. I pray for them, but I'm still going to be their friend no matter what. And I'm not going to try to convert them every single opportunity that I get because I want to love them into a journey that maybe they're not having right now. So this intention piece is really, really hard for so many of us. Okay, so if they have the right impression of you and you have a clear intention, number 3, invitation into life, not just to a church service, okay? And I know there might be people watching online or sitting here or on another campus that are like, wait a second, this is how I met Jesus, was kind of this process, right? This would be like a natural, organic process. Invitation would be invite them into a rhythm of your life. Can you have your neighbors over every other week? And to maintain a good impression, you got to follow through, okay? Can you do that every other week? What's a natural thing you can invite people to? And you're like, so that I can convert them? No, so that you can love them like Jesus would love them. The ironic part of this is they will naturally start to ask you questions, and you ask them questions that will make sense in the context of your relationship, that if you just try to go there right away, it wouldn't work. So this is the third one. The fourth one is actually that piece. It's initiation. How do we initiate conversations that matter? Okay. So if we can just pause for a second, this is usually what we want to go to, that if you're sitting and talking to a waiter or a waitress or the person cutting your hair, and you're like, how do I initiate the conversation it's going to change their life forever, and if they get in a car wreck on the way home, they're not going to go to hell, they're going to go to heaven, okay? Let me say this. I do believe that we have the impulse of Jesus through the power of the Holy Spirit, that there are moments like that. I think if you try to live a life like that, people aren't going to want to be around you all that much because they're like, can we just be around you? If you try to initiate conversations without having a good impression, with having ulterior motives, and you don't have natural rhythms in their life, that's called weird. Right? Is that not weird to you? That's weird to me. If I don't know you and I can be like, you kind of feel like a car salesman, which if you're a car salesman is fine, it's just a cliche. But if I feel like you kind of feel like a car salesman and we don't do life together at all, but you want to talk to me about where my soul's going to go? No thanks. That's weird. But if we're doing this right, and the impression's in line, and we've got clear intentions, and we're inviting them to life, number 1, you're going to have a lot of fun, okay? You're going to have a lot of fun, I think, and you're going to be a fun person to be around. If we're doing this right, it actually becomes weird to not talk about things that matter, right? It becomes weird to just talk about the weather and sports all the time. this is an important piece.
Yeah, so let me ask you, okay, so if I'm leaning into this, so I have a friend, I want to have those conversations. How would you start a conversation about things that matter with somebody?
Yeah, well, it's going to be up to your personality, but I like to read. So I ask people, again, if we're doing life regularly, I'll say, hey, what's a book that's really transformed your life? And if they'll tell me a book, I've read a lot of weird books because of that. Okay, which, by the way, Peter Pan's not a happy book. I learned that quick. So they'll tell you, and then I just say, hey, I'm going to read a book, and I'm going to read that, and then next time we come together, let's talk about it, like why you like that book. And then I'll say, let's do that. I'll give you a book then, and then we'll keep doing this, which is not when you just go, and here's the Bible, okay, the book of John. That's not when you do that. It just according to the genre, those sort of things. For me, that's natural, okay? That's natural for me. And I've done this with barbers. I've done this with whoever. Just, hey, next haircut, right? And it's just natural to initiate that. Other people have intentionally ordered a hot, like extra hot cup of coffee. I'm serious. And they'll say out loud, hey, I just want to ask you questions about your life for this entire cup of coffee. So tell me about, and let's go. And you just have to drink slowly. Those would be some ways.
Yeah, and so let's talk about this for a moment. So one of the skill sets that you're actually talking about is listening, leaning into somebody else's life, being patient just with the story that they tell you, empathizing a little bit, which I think is really something our whole world needs, not just in the evangelism setting, but there's been a lot of tension in the world. I don't know if you've noticed that the last couple of years. And maybe even your Thanksgiving meals have been with people that are part of your extended family or people related to you, and it becomes very awkward. These skills work really well in those moments too,
Correct.
Right? Because part of making the right impression is this idea of listening.
That's right. Yeah, so the neuroscience behind this, this comes from a book called Conversational Intelligence. There's actually, anytime that Jesus and neuroscience are saying the same thing, we should listen up, okay? But what it says is when you engage with someone who doesn't think, look, or act like you, immediately you're in the resistor part of their brain. It's the back part, it's the amygdala, and they're in the resistor part of your brain. So you're like, so we're going to continually resist each other. Think of your brain like a meter. At the front part, the most healthy place for relationships to live is in the co-creation part of your brain, which might be why Jesus kept asking questions, like over 300 questions he's asking throughout the Gospels, because he's getting them to own their faith, okay? It's a co-creation. So the meter goes like this: resistor to skeptic to wait and see to experimenter to co-create. That's the meter. And what they've learned is the way to move from here to here is actually through trust. So then the question naturally is, well, what's the best, quickest way to develop trust? And they said it's through listening. That's the number one way. So the people in your life that you're like, I wish that they would be open to changing their mind. Their brain would be saying, they may not say it out loud, I wish that you would be open to listening. And they actually go hand in hand. And the Bible says a lot about that. So that number 4, initiation, is a big piece. Then here's number 5, imitation. Imitation. You might think, like, why is number 5 not immersion? Like, baptize them, right? Well, because we're on the negative side of the scale. Baptism would be on the positive side of discipleship after conversion. This is, what mission can you invite them in on that's going to be like Jesus? What can you do to help your community? What things is the church doing that you just invite them to be part of? Because what people put their hands to does, in fact, stir their affections. And so this is inviting them into how you are living like Jesus and letting them imitate that with you, even if they don't ever or they're not yet believers. So.
Yeah, that's really good. So a serve day or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
You know, projects.
Or something they come up with, maybe there's a need in their neighborhood.
Okay, so there's a couple groups in the room that I want you to talk to for a moment. So one is, if I know we have some parents and their kids aren't really walking with God. Maybe they were at one point, and there's a tension around conversations of faith because there's a frustration and disappointments on both sides. And so since you walked that journey, talk to families, especially parents, give a little bit of hope what to expect or do.
Yeah, to the parent who's listening, who's like, my child is a prodigal. I want them to, I want to make them come home, or I want them to come home. Our experience through talking to people who have deconstructed or their faith or deconverted from the faith has been prodigals. A lot of them are asking, how do I come home? They'll be saying things like, I wish my parents were the type of people I could go back to. So while we think, how do we get the prodigal to come home? The prodigal is often thinking, how do they become the type of person I feel safe coming home to? So my advice would be, become a safe place for them. That your judgment mechanism has to be turned down. Look, yes, they have different lifestyle choices, habits, beliefs, all those things. But your command from Scripture actually is not convert your child. It would be love them as Jesus has loved us. And that would be hard. And I know there's a lot of layers in that, but I would say just quickly, become the type of person where the impression, start at impression, where they're like, oh, I actually felt safe this Christmas. I felt safe over the summer with them. They asked a lot of questions about me, and we laughed together. Bring levity into the room. I think those are important pieces.
Yeah, so we're not talking about you changing your belief system to accommodate.
No.
We're just saying do the relationship, through the proper process. Okay.
And try to learn more about your kid. Yeah.
If maybe you're someone and you're where Preston was, you're like, I don't know if God exists. Maybe you thought, I've never really believed any of this. I'm not even sure what I think about this conversation. What would you say to someone who's in that process?
Yeah, if you're here and you're a doubter, atheist, spiritually wounded, or somewhere in between, you're like, I don't even know what I am. Do not put a label on me, okay? I would say, I know there's probably reasons why you don't want to be a Jesus follower. I know that. And all I would ask is, can we just start with Jesus? Can we start with him? That the goal would not be to make you be Preston or to make you be anyone else, but can we just start with Jesus? What would it look like to start with him? Because here's the deal. When I was not part of the Christianity, I would look at other worldviews that I'm like, what do I believe, And I always ran into this man, Jesus. I always did. I'm like, he doesn't, why does every worldview have something to say about him? Even if you're like, he didn't exist, which would be kind of far-fetched belief, but if you say he doesn't exist, you got to say something about him. Jesus is kind of everywhere in every belief system in some way. And I would just say, can you start with him? Because you're going to run into him no matter where you go. And when you start with Jesus, then you just go, okay, is what he said and what he did, is that real? And you just walk through. Now, here's the deal. I'm not telling you your questions will go away. Your questions are wrapped up in your story, and your story's not going anywhere. But what I am saying is, it's probably the one worldview, Christianity, belief in Jesus. Let's go, belief in Jesus. It's the one way to live where your questions are actually welcomed in, okay? That you wrestling with the God of the universe is not just an appropriate posture, it might be a preferred one. So when I FaceTimed my kids last night, and my daughter's like, Dad, I had a volleyball game, like, how'd it go? Good. And then run around, and she's playing the flute with her nose, showing me happy birthday, playing with her nose, okay? So you know what they don't ask me over FaceTime? Dad, do you want to wrestle? You want to wrestle with me? Because I'm like, I can't. I'm not in close proximity to them. What they will do the minute I walk in the door, we'll laugh and play and have a snack together, and then they'll say, Dad, you want to wrestle before bedtime? Because I'm in close proximity. So if you're here and you're like, yeah, I'm like, if I enter a relationship with God, I'm going to be wrestling with him. I think he's the type of father that's like, yeah, that means we're in close proximity. You can't wrestle from far away. So to the doubter, the skeptic, spiritually wounded person here, that I would say, can we start with Jesus today? Start a relationship with him. Bring your questions and see what happens. See what happens.
All right, so the book's called Doubters Club. You can purchase it at any of the campuses. You'll find it on Amazon as well. And if you're interested in starting a Doubters Club,
just go to thedoubtersclub.com. There's a little brief, your name, email, and you put a message, and it'll kick it to me or someone on our team, and then we'll get you plugged into virtual training, and it's real. Anyone can do it. Anyone.
So would you pray for the folks that are wrestling right now?
Yeah. Thank you, God, that you are not after us because of how right our beliefs are. In fact, you didn't even tell us that that our right beliefs will change the world. But that, Lord, we can bring our questions and our doubts to you. Thank you for that. So I pray for everyone in this room that is there. Maybe they're even on the verge. They're like, I was a Christian and I was about ready to leave, but I'm going to try it again. I pray that, God, you would bring them the comfort of someone who loves the wrestling match, and that you would also affirm them in starting with Jesus. Sometimes that's a scary thing. So Jesus, we just come to you and say, help those people to start with you today. Step into our lives, and we just pray that our affection would be changed to loving you as we learn about you and as we walk with you, and that would start today in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Preston. Would you again appreciate
Thanks
him
so
for
much.
sharing with us? It's beautiful. Let's all stand up here today if we can, and Preston will be out in the concourse here at Hampton. If you'd like to get the book, there's plenty on sale there. You can also have a conversation with him if you'd like to talk about anything, and we're just glad you came today. We're going to worship, and then in just a moment, we're going to go out and celebrate those being baptized. But if you signed up for baptism or you decided during the service you want to get baptized, over that way in the doorway, you'll find someone to meet you, to take you to get ready for that moment. And then we're going to have a little worship time together, and we'll be out there in just a few minutes to celebrate your baptism. So you can move right now. Let's worship, and I'll come back and lead us out in prayer.
You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. Sing that again with me now. You are, yeah. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. I've tried so hard. I've tried so hard to see it. It took me so long to believe it, that you choose someone like me to carry your victory. Perfection could never earn it. You give what we don't deserve. Take the broken things and raise them to glory. Sing it with me now, come on. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. Yeah. Now I can finally see. Now I can finally see it. You're teaching me how to receive it. So let all the striving cease. This is my victory. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly
right, let me just pray for you now. May the Lord bless you and keep you, make his face to shine on you, turn to you, be gracious to you, and give you his peace. I pray that just like Preston described, that you would be baptized in his love, that you'd know how much he loves you, that he chooses you, that he values you, and that he would use you in this week. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thanks for being a part of the service today. We hope you'll stick around and see those being baptized and celebrate them. Have a great day. God bless.
All right, y'all, we got 3 big things we want you to know before you head out. First thing off, man.
What a message.
Preston Ulmer, what
Wow.
a guy. He is just, man, he's so smart, so intellectual, but also makes it so practical for us.
And his heart for people comes through too.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And so I know I feel challenged. Like, I want to go outside of the Christian bubble I might live in and
Yeah.
talk to people who aren't like me, who are different than me, who honestly, who need Jesus. And so I challenge you to do the same thing, whether that's at your workplace or maybe
Yeah.
even a coffee shop like Preston with that first story, whatever it is. Let's find those people who need Jesus and have those conversations because they're so needed.
Yeah, for sure. And if also during the message you made the decision to give your life to Jesus today, we want to celebrate that with you. We believe that's the best decision you could ever make with your life. We want to come alongside, provide you resources, help walk this journey with you. And so if you would do us a favor, text 2022 decision to the number 97,000 or let us know in the chat. That way we can begin that conversation with you, get what you need in your hands, and just celebrate together with you because, again, best decision you could ever make with your life. We're so happy for you.
For real. And hey, if you would like to give today, you can give on the APC app, our website, or even text any dollar amount to 84321. But if it's one of your first few times here, we just want to say there's no pressure. Zero pressure for you to be a part of that. We're just so glad that you're hanging out with us today.
Yeah, well, hey, you might hear in the background the music's getting loud. Our MCs for water baptism are getting ready to go. And
I'm
so,
hopping in the tank.
Oh,
today.
you're hopping in the tank. So, yeah, we're going to get ready to sign off and celebrate with those who are making that decision today. And so, hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and we will see you this time next weekend.
Peace out, y'all.